Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, April 10th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Coming up, the water that flows along the Kern River in Bakersfield isn't just something that stays in Bakersfield.
How the various courts and courts of appeals rule on the Kern River could have potential effects in a lot of conservation efforts.
We unpack a legal ruling over the river's water flows and what it could mean for other water channels. But first, these news headlines. President Donald Trump has announced a 90-day pause on tariff hikes around the globe, except in China, where a full-on trade war is brewing. Taxes on Chinese imports are now set to rise 125%. As KVPR's Joshua Yeager reports, this escalation could have major impacts on the Central Valley's agricultural industry.
China has vowed to challenge tariffs from the U.S. with tariffs of its own. A prime target for those are crops grown here in the San Joaquin Valley, like almonds and mandarins. Richard Gearhart is an economics professor at CSU Bakersfield.
You are going to see tremendous concern in the ag space about where and how they're going to sell their products, because there's still a base 10% tariff on every other country in the world.
A trade dispute with China during Trump's first term resulted in a farmer relief package totaling $16 billion. Gearhart says the damage to growers this go-around could be double or even triple that amount. For KVPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager in Bakersfield.
A new bill being introduced in Congress seeks to address the condition of sequoia trees. Bakersfield Congressman Vince Fong introduced the so-called Save Our Sequoias Act on Wednesday.
And it is time we come together as legislators to no longer allow poor forest management to devastate our sacred trees.
If passed, the bill would address forest restoration as well as prevent damage to giant sequoias by wildfires and pests. Over the last 2 years, almost 20% of sequoias have been destroyed by wildfires. The Tule River Indian Tribe supports the legislation. The Department of Government Efficiency has now come after grants for arts and humanities. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, one program on the chopping block is a teacher training residency in Kern County.
The California Dreamin' program would bring teachers from all over the country to Bakersfield. They'd learn about the history of migration and farm labor. Project lead Oliver Rosales is a history professor at Bakersfield College. He says the program was slated to take place this summer, but the federal grant that was funding the residency was canceled this month.
I teach in Delano. This is my students' history. And so I view it as an attack on the subjects that I teach, that I want to share with the country.
His $190,000 grant came from the National Endowment for the Humanities, or NEH. He thought those grants were safe.
It has bipartisan support in Congress, right? And they're supposed to control the purse. So I thought the NEH would be protected.
Data from a national organization shows humanities grants totaling hundreds of millions of dollars have been canceled across the country. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
The Fresno County Board of Supervisors plans to review a farm tax incentive program that recently came under scrutiny. Our news partner Fresno Land investigated the county's use of the Williamson Act. That's an act introduced in the 1960s, but which few counties in the state use. It was intended to prevent farmers from selling their land to real estate developers by offering them tax breaks. The Fresno Land investigation found the tax program has instead diverted nearly $1 billion to megafarm investors out of state. Residents in Tulare County will no longer have to pay to enter county parks. The Board of Supervisors has approved a resolution that does away with all entrance fees by July. County supervisors say the goal is to increase the use of county parks. The only fees will be for large groups who choose to reserve certain facilities.
The annual KVPR wine tasting is coming Sunday, May 4th. Once again, we'll be gathering at the beautiful Lester Estate on the San Joaquin River for an afternoon of wine and beer sampling, delectable food, and great friends. There will be live music, a silent auction, and a raffle to win $1,500. Complimentary round-trip bus transportation, including lunch, will be provided in Bakersfield and Visalia. Tickets are now on sale at kvpr.org/wine.
And now to our main story. Today, we have a follow-up to a conversation we aired a couple of months ago. That's when thousands of dead fish showed up in a dry, mile-long portion of the Kern River in Bakersfield. The dead fish sparked concerns, finger-pointing, and ultimately angered environmentalists, many of whom had already filed a lawsuit against the city of Bakersfield for its management of the Kern River. Just this month, those environmentalists were dealt a legal blow when a judge reversed a ruling that mandated water be present in the Kern riverbed. That means that dry areas are legally allowed. In a recent article for the news website SJV Water, the spokesperson for Bring Back the Kern, one of the groups in the lawsuit, called the move a, quote, gut punch. Lois Henry is editor and CEO of our news partner, SJV Water. Her newsroom is also a news partner of the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. Lois has been covering this Kern River lawsuit and joins us today to explain this latest development. She starts us off by providing some background on the ongoing lawsuit.
A number of different people or entities have been trying to get water back into the Kern River through town. There's water in the Kern River pretty much year-round east of Bakersfield, but it's put into various different irrigation canals, and most of the time, unless it's a really big water year, the river through Bakersfield is dry. And people have been trying to change that through various ways, and the most pressing issue at the moment is a lawsuit that was filed in 2022 by a public interest group called Bring Back the Kern, along with several other interest groups. I think the Sierra Club is involved, the Audubon Society, and Kern River Parkway Foundation. But Bring Back the Kern is spearheading this lawsuit. And they're suing the city of Bakersfield for its operations, how it operates the river. So the city of Bakersfield is really in charge of, even though all of these other irrigation districts have rights to the river and they have head gates and they have canals off the river, the city is the one that has operational responsibility. So that's why this lawsuit is directed at the city of Bakersfield, and it's basically accusing the city of not incorporating environmental concerns or the public trust doctrine into its operations.
Yeah, and I just want to explain this a little bit further, that this reversal of the preliminary injunction does not mean this case is done, right? It's basically just a court order before the final judgment that says, in the meantime, water does not have to be flowing in the Kern River in that part, right?
Right. The main lawsuit that I described that was filed in 2022 is continuing on. It has the trial date has actually been set for December 10th of this year. The injunction that you're talking about, and it's a pretty big deal. In 2023, water came rushing back everywhere in California, and the Kern River was full, bank to bank. And so Bring Back the Kern sought an injunction, a preliminary injunction against the city, asking that water be kept in the river for the benefit of fish. And they invoked California Department of Fish and Game Code 5937 that states the operator of any dam must make sure there's enough water downstream for fish. So that was the injunction that Judge Pulskamp here in Kern County, he agreed to it. He initiated it in October of 2023. They appealed it in January of 2024. And then the 5th District Court of Appeals just ruled, like last week, they reversed the order. And it was a really strong reversal. They reversed it, and they did remand it back to Kern County with instructions that if you want to reinvestigate this injunction, here's our guidelines. But the guidelines are absolutely, there's just no way they can overcome it. So it's a profound reversal, and there's a lot of talk about it going to the California Supreme Court.
Okay, well, you spoke with folks from Bring Back the Kern. What did they have to say about this reversal?
Well, they're talking to me and I'm in the media, so they're putting on, a pretty good face of like, oh, we're still going to go. We still have the trial. We feel like we have, right on our side and we're going to win, and there's going to be water in the Kern River flowing on a regular basis. But that reversal of the injunction it was a published opinion, so it carries a lot of legal weight. And one of the things that it did is that it said that a judge can't just issue a nominal bond in an injunction. So in this particular case, they had the plaintiffs bring back the Kern. They had them put up $1,000 bond. Well, in the course of the appeal, the agricultural water district said, look, in the 5 months that injunction was in place, we lost $5.7 million in water. So the justices of the Fifth District Court of Appeal said, no, you can't just do a nominal bond. You have to put up enough money to cover what the actual expenses might be that the enjoined party could lose.
Wow. I encourage people to find your article on the SJV Water website because you have some stark photos there that show a little kid jumping from a swing into this huge river compared to that same shot with the swing dangling over just a completely dry riverbed. It really gives an image to what we're discussing here. For those who are not following this legal battle closely, can you just elaborate on why this matters for everyday people?
Well, in Kern County and in Bakersfield, there's a very kind of strong tussle, and it kind of pulls at everybody's heartstrings on both sides. It's not just, I want a river. No, we want it for agriculture. People here are involved in agriculture. We know very well that, most people's livelihoods, are connected to agriculture in one way or another. So nobody wants to see ag, suffer any more than it's already suffered under various other regulations. But at the same time, people are like, why can't we just have some sort of even a trickle of a river? Instead, we've got this, just this scar in the middle of the city that's just used for trash dumping. And it's just, it's awful. So how the various courts and courts of appeals rule on the Kern River could have potential effects in a lot of conservation efforts. So that's why people are very closely watching this particular case. And in fact, the Attorney General's office came in and filed an amicus brief. And not only that, but they asked for and were granted time to make arguments in front of the Fifth District Court of Appeal because these are fundamental issues, how that Fish and Game Code 5937 is applied, how the public trust doctrine is applied. These are fundamental issues for much larger conservation issues throughout the state. So it bears watching. And, I like to say that the Kern River is kind of the most important river, legally speaking, in California that nobody knows about.
Yeah, wow. So, Lois, what's next at this point?
Well, everybody's kind of licking their wounds and thinking, well, what are we going to do? Or, obviously not the agricultural districts. They're quite pleased with the fair repudiation of that injunction. But the other side, the plaintiffs, are taking all things into consideration. Should they go to the Supreme Court? Should they, parcel it out? Should they seek another injunction? And then they've got, of course, the trial date coming up for the main case. So it's never a dull moment on the Kern River, dry or not.
That was Lois Henry, CEO and editor of SJV Water. Thank you, Lois.
All right, thanks.
If you'd like to hear our previous conversation with Lois about the mass fish die-off in the Kern River, check out our October 3rd episode of the podcast. And that does it for today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
This is Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. You'll see your favorite actors, directors, and comedians on late-night TV shows or YouTube. But what you get with Fresh Air is a deep dive. Spend some quality time with people like Billie Eilish, Questlove, Ariana Grande, Stephen Colbert, and so many more. We ask questions you won't hear asked anywhere else. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.